Imagine this. The Willowbrook Ridge Homeowners Association president storming up to my freshly bought, crumbling old cabin, her face twisted in rage, screaming that it was her son's rightful legacy, all while I stood there with a chainsaw in hand, sweat dripping down my back, not knowing yet that a dusty old paper from 1873 hidden in the walls would flip the script entirely, proving I owned half the Silverpine Valley, and her fancy clan had been trespassing like ghosts on borrowed land for generations. Yeah, that's how it all kicked off, a showdown that started with sawdust and ended with shattered empires, the kind of raw injustice that boils your blood, making you clench your fists thinking about how the privileged play dirty to keep what's never been theirs. Let me pull you in closer, because this isn't just some tale of property squabbles. It's the kind of raw, gut-wrenching battle that exposes how the entitled cling to power with their manicured nails, how one man's quiet dream of rebuilding his life after everything crumbled can unearth buried truths that toppled dynasties built on lies. And honestly, looking back, it feels like fate had been whispering in my ear the whole time, urging me to dig deeper, to fight harder, even as the world seemed stacked against me, with every setback reminding me of the family bonds that kept me going, Grandpa's lessons echoing like a lifeline in the chaos. My name's Ethan Blackwell, 45 years young, or at least that's how I felt before the divorce ripped through my world like a tornado through a trailer park, leaving me with nothing but echoes of a 20-year marriage that ended in bitter arguments over who got the damn coffee maker, a sold-off suburban house that funded lawyers who billed like they were printing money from my soul, and this deep, aching void where stability used to be, the kind of emptiness that hits you at 3 a.m. when you're staring at the ceiling, wondering if you'll ever feel whole again. But hey, rock bottom has its perks, right? It's where you rediscover the fire in your belly, or in my case, the calluses on my hands from the carpentry my grandpa taught me as a kid, those summer afternoons in his workshop, the smell of varnish and sawdust mixing with his stories of hard work paying off. Grandpa, God rest him, he was the real deal, a man who could turn rough lumber into art with just a chisel and patience, the kind of guy who'd fix neighbors' fences for free just to see them smile. And when he passed last year, leaving me his weathered toolbox, full of hammers worn smooth from decades of use, and a modest $37,000 scribbled note attached saying, "Ethan, create something lasting, something that honors the blood we share." Words that haunted me during those sleepless nights. Scrolling through county auctions at ungodly hours, my eyes burning from the screen glow, heart heavy with loss, until I stumbled on it. This majestic 1873 log cabin spread across 15 acres in Silverpine Valley, a tiny speck of a town with 847 souls where old fortunes rubbed elbows uneasily with shiny new estates. The listing photos showing those ancient oak beams, solid as faith, though worn by time and neglect, cracks in the logs telling tales of storms survived, and when I toured it alone, the musty aroma of aged wood wrapping around me like a hug from history, creaking floors underfoot whispering secrets, sunlight filtering through dusty windows casting patterns that felt like omens. I knew, deep in my bones, this was my shot at redemption, a place to hammer out the pain, to build anew, to channel Grandpa's spirit into every nail driven. Auction day was pure adrenaline, the room packed with bidders eyeing each other like wolves, me outbidding some slick young guy in a luxury sedan who kept glancing at his phone like salvation was a text away, his bids climbing frantically, but mine holding steady at $47,000, sealing the deal on a clean title, no liens, just pure ownership, or so I thought, the gavel's crack echoing my heartbeat. A mix of triumph and terror as I signed the papers, driving back with the deed in my glove box feeling like I'd just reclaimed a piece of myself. But reality bit hard on day 3 of renovations, me knee-deep in replacing decayed deck planks, the air alive with the buzz of my tools and the crisp scent of fresh sawn pine that cleared my head like therapy, sweat soaking my shirt as I visualized the finished porch where I'd sip coffee at dawn, when this gleaming black SUV barrels up my rutted driveway, kicking up dust like an invading army, coating my tools in a gritty haze. And out steps Victoria Harrington, mid-50s, perfectly coiffed, auburn hair catching the light, eyes blazing with that mix of fury and superiority only the self-appointed elite can muster. President of the Willowbrook Ridge Homeowners Association, wife to Richard Harrington of Harrington Builders, the local construction kings who'd paved over half the valley with their cookie-cutter mansions, and she marches right up, heels sinking into the soft earth, demanding I halt everything because this land was meant for her son Connor, a so-called gentleman's pact with the previous owner, her words dripping with condescension as she eyed my dusty jeans and work boots like they offended her very soul, her perfume, an overpriced floral assault, clashing with the natural woods. I shut off the saw, the silence crashing and heavy, broken only by birdsong in the distant trees and her sharp breaths, steam practically rising from her ears, and I tell her straight, "Ma'am, I purchased this legitimately, deed in hand," showing her the papers with ink still fresh, but she laughs, that cold, brittle sound echoing off the trees like a villain's cackle, insisting auctions don't erase family legacies, that this property was destined for those who uphold community values, her tone, laced with that subtle dig at my blue-collar roots, the kind I've heard before from bosses explaining why guys like me don't climb ladders, implying I was some outsider trash sullying their pristine world. And as she struts back to her ride, tossing a veiled thread about building permits being challenging for outsiders who don't play by unwritten rules, I stand there, dust settling on my boots, heart racing with a mix of anger and amusement at her audacity, wondering if I'd just bought more than a cabin, maybe a war I didn't sign up for, but something in me, that stubborn spark Grandpa ignited during those long talks about standing tall against bullies, whispered to hold firm, because bullies like her thrive on fear, and I was done running after the divorce stripped me bare. The hits came quick after that. A call from the county office claiming my permits vanished in a system glitch. The clerk's voice nervous on the line, forcing me to refile a mountain of paperwork that smelled like sabotage, pages upon pages of forms that made my head spin. Then an inspector named Harold Jenkins shows up uninvited, clipboard in hand, face blank as unpainted drywall, his boots crunching gravel as he circled my site like a vulture, citing me for fictional infractions like historical alterations without approval and improper debris handling on my neatly stacked burn pile, slapping me with $2,300 in fines and a stop work order that halted everything cold, the morning mist still hanging low as he drove off, leaving me fuming amid the scent of idle tools and damp earth, my plans grinding to a halt, the injustice burning like acid in my gut, thinking of Grandpa's toolbox gathering dust while these pricks played games. And I knew, deep down, this wasn't coincidence. It was orchestrated, a power play to squeeze me out before I could root in. But Grandpa's voice echoed again, reminding me that cheaters often break their own rules. So I dove into the archives, the dim-lit room smelling of moldy paper and forgotten time, fingers staining with ancient ink as I pored over yellowed records for hours, unearthing that my cabin predated zoning laws by nearly a century, a grandfather gem immune to their modern meddling, a small victory that fueled my fire. That's when I sought out Sophia Ramirez, a sharp-witted attorney in her 70s with silver streaks in her hair and a gaze that could pierce steel, her office above the hardware store creaking like old bones as I climbed the stairs, the scent of fresh paint from below mixing with her herbal tea. And she confirmed it all, explaining how pre-existing builds had ironclad protections under the Constitution, pulling files on similar cases where newcomers like me, tradesmen, dreamers, got harassed until they fled town broke and broken, her words painting a picture of a racket run by the Harringtons, a family dynasty that treated the valley like their personal fiefdom. And as I left, armed with knowledge and a stack of precedents, I felt a shift from victim to fighter, the by-kitch of their unfair game turning into my motivation, but victory was fleeting. Because there was Victoria again, snapping photos at my fence line like a spy in a bad thriller, muttering about undesirable elements, dragging down property values, her perfume clashing with the twilight air, a scent of floral aggression that lingered like the threat she embodied, her eyes narrowing as she implied I was the cancer in their perfect community, and I realized this was personal, a clash of worlds, her polished privilege against my gritty resolve, the love for my family's legacy, pushing me to stand firm, setting the stage for the storm brewing ahead. tension coiling like a spring ready to snap. The escalation hit like a freight train barreling through fog, every day layering on new absurdities that tested my sanity, made me question if rebuilding was worth the hellfire raining down. But with each low blow, my resolve hardened, turning quiet frustration into a roaring need for justice, because this wasn't just about a cabin anymore. It was about standing against a system rigged for the few at the expense of the many, about honoring the sweat of generations past that built this land. Honestly, and yeah, there was a twisted humor in watching their schemes unravel, like a bad villain plot in a movie where the underdog starts swinging back with facts and fury, the unfairness of it all fueling my late-night plotting. Week 3, I gate-crashed their emergency HOA meeting at the Silver Pine Community Hall, slipping in through the side door as whispers buzzed, the room thick with stale coffee and whispered anxieties from folks who'd been cowed for years, folding chairs groaning under the weight of 30 residents as Victoria clicked through slides labeling my home a threat to prosperity. Photos angled to make it look like a derelict shack straight out of a horror flick, proposing a $500 levy per home to defend standards. Her voice saccharine poison as she painted me as some transient menace bringing crime and decay, her slides flashing graphs of dropping values that looked fabricated. And when an elderly widow, Mrs. Patterson, piped up with a trembling voice about preserving true heritage instead of fake opulence, Victoria dismissed her with patronizing grace, that fake smile hiding the venom. That's when I rose, heart pounding but voice steady, revealing the meeting was public per the notice. And in walks Sophia, briefcase snapping open like a declaration of war, dropping bombshells from the HOA's own charter, showing my land was never under their thumb, that they'd fleeced the prior owner for dues illegally for 17 years, the silence electric, broken only by buzzing fluorescence and a few gasps, as Connor Harrington leaped up in denial, his face flushing red, his family's management exposed as a sham of extortion and control. The meeting dissolved into pandemonium, neighbors fracturing into factions, some nodding in secret agreement, others shouting defenses, and as we exited into the cool night, Victoria cornered me in the lot, her breath fogging the chill air scented with fallen leaves, hissing about connections that could crush me, name-dropping commissioners and legislators like shields, but I drove off tasting defiance, the stars above mocking her threats, only for the next dawn to bring heavy equipment from Harrington Builders repairing my water line, pressure dropping to a trickle under Richard's smirking supervision. Emergencies happen, he quipped with a wink that made me want to punch through his hard hat, his crew digging trenches that turned my drive into a mud pit, while suppliers ghosted me with flimsy excuses about delivery issues in a town small enough to walk end to end. My insurance suspended over bogus claims of hazards, the agent's voice apologetic on the line as he read off anonymous tips, and even Chief Maria Lopez called, her tone heavy with reluctant sympathy, warning of piled-on complaints, noise, environment, suspicious activity, urging documentation as patrol cars slow-rolled my street at odd hours. Connor's sedan caught on cam snapping pics like an amateur sleuth with zero subtlety, the headlights piercing the dusk like accusatory eyes. By Friday, a business card under my wiper offered cash buyout from their firm, audacious as hell, the ink still smelling fresh, and when Mike Donovan, the local hardware guy with grease-stained hands and a heart of gold, showed up thermos in hand, eyes stormy with suppressed rage, revealing Richard threatened his supplier credit for aiding me, but handing over photocopied permits exposing Harold Jenkins' rubber-stamping favoritism for Harrington projects while torpedoing others, we pieced together the corruption web over coffee that burned our tongues, laughing bitterly at their sloppiness, the patterns screaming conspiracy, and then, fate's twist, me prying at a basement stone during a frustrated fix, crowbar echoing hollow in the dim light, dust motes dancing as I revealed a leather pouch from another era, fingers trembling as I unwrapped it, documents unfolding like destiny's map. A 1873 territorial grant to Jeremiah Blackwell, my ancestor, claiming 50 acres including minerals and waters, the wax seal cracked but intact, a hand-sketched boundary swallowing half the valley, Harrington turf included, and a letter warning of challenges to descendants, my knees buckling on the cold floor as implications rushed in like a flood, not just land, but potential riches from gas veins whispered about in town lore, a reversal so poetic it hurt. Tears stinging my eyes thinking of Grandpa's note. This was the something lasting he'd meant. I summoned Sophia and Dr. Elena Vargas from the Historical Society, her tests confirming authenticity under lab lights, paper aging, ink fades matching perfectly, Sophia grinning like we'd struck gold, declaring I owned the valley's heart, and we turned my kitchen into command central, Mike and Helen Whitaker joining with coffee and research, Helen's genealogy linking Jeremiah to mineral notes from old surveys, her excitement bubbling as she traced family trees back through wars and migrations. Chief Lopez reviewing evidence of misconduct, timelines aligning into prosecutable patterns that exposed the Harringtons' grip on officials, our plan crystallizing, quiet title suit, authentication rush, corruption probe, and media leak via Helen's old pupil Emily Wong, the reporter hungry for scandal, her voice eager on the phone as we fed her tips, as experts swarmed. Surveyors pacing boundaries with tapes and GPS, geologists drilling samples that confirmed lucrative deposits, environmental. Lawyers affirming water rights. Our takeout-fueled session mapping phases over greasy cartons, toasts raised to flipping the script, but tension simmered, knowing retaliation loomed like thunderclouds, the by-kitch of their past victims. Families torn apart, dreams crushed, driving us to end it. Sure enough, Monday's road work tore up access with backhoes rumbling at dawn, septic sabotage followed with rags jammed in pipes, the plumber cursing as he pulled out the mess, costing thousands and stinking up the place. Inspectors paraded like a regulatory circus, each waving vague tips from anonymous sources, finding zilch but draining my spirit with their endless questions and forms. Evening shadows hiding trespassers on cam. Their botched vandalism, spray paint and sugar for tanks. Leaving Connor's wallet behind. Hilarious in its stupidity, the ID photo showing his smug grin, and when Richard arrived with a briefcase of $200,000 cash, tempting as sin in neat stacks that could erase my debts, I recorded his slip-ups, exposing their knowledge of the grant, his threats bouncing off as I showed him out, the door slamming with finality, but Wednesday's dead animals on my porch, reeking of decay and desperation. Tire tracks matching Connor's ride etched in the mud, pushed me to call Chief Lopez, her fury igniting federal interest as she photographed the scene, vowing this crossed into felony madness. Then my ex's panicked call about Victoria's interstate meddling, her voice shaking across the line, escalating to stalking charges that turned local BS into big league crime, and climaxing that night with gasoline scents wafting on the breeze, cams catching Connor prepping arson in clumsy shadows. 911 summoning responders, his flea leaving prints and a spilled can. The scene lit like a thriller set with sirens wailing, detectives tallying felonies from harassment to attempted torching, arrests rolling in as news footage captured Connor's cuffing amid his mom's hysterical pleas, a restraining order slamming down, air finally breathable, justice's edge sharp and satisfying, the payback feeling like a long overdue exhale. The fallout unfolded like a slow-burn finale, every thread pulling tight until the villain's web snapped with a satisfying crack, leaving them exposed in the harsh light of accountability, a cinematic unraveling where the oppressed rise, families mend. ND corruption crumbles under the weight of truth, but not without that final, explosive confrontation that sealed it all, reminding me how close we danced to disaster. How sweet the triumph tasted after swallowing so much bitterness, the righteous vengeance a balm for the soul after years of their unchecked tyranny. Thursday's town hall overflowed with 300 locals crammed in, media rigs humming with camera clicks, deputies guarding doors amid scents of sweat and storm brewing ozone from the gathering crowd. Commissioner Ellis fumbling openings at the podium, his tie askew as Victoria leaped up, decrying me as a fraudster tainting their legacy, her voice cracking with desperation, but I advanced with Sophia, unveiling the authenticated grant under spotlights that cast dramatic shadows, Dr. Vargas detailing verifications, paper composition, seal fibers, all matching historical records. The room hushed, then erupting as boundaries revealed swallowed their empire. Minerals promising fortunes that could fund generations, Victoria shattering with screams of deceit, her lawyers scrambling notes in panic, Chief Lopez announcing FBI probes with a folder of evidence, warrants for Richard on graft and bribery, Judge Alicia Rivera affirming my ownership from the bench, gavel thundering order like Judgment Day. Victoria slumping defeated in her seat, permanent bans issued barring them from my world, the crowd dispersing in shocked vindication, air electric with change, whispers of relief from those they'd bullied for years. 6 months on, I leaned on my polished porch during the inaugural Silver Pine Heritage Fair, meadows blooming where their sprawl once loomed ugly and imposing. The Harringtons pleading out in court, Richard jailed 2 years for schemes that unraveled like cheap yarn, spending days in a cell reflecting on his empire's fall, Connor probation to restore sites with sweat equity, his hands blistering on tools for the first time. Victoria selling assets for restitutions to harassed families, her charges lingering like shadows over her diminished life, while the community bloomed anew, Helen's festival alive with bluegrass tunes fiddling through the air, children's laughter echoing off the hills, Mike's Grill's sizzling redemption with ribs that fell off the bone, funded by my $12 million gas lease that turned buried wealth into communal good. Cabin museum grade with modern touches like solar panels blending seamlessly with original beams, honoring Jeremiah's vision of perseverance. Scholarships flowing for trades and justice studies to empower the next generation against similar injustices. Emily chronicling it all, her book brewing from interviews that captured the raw emotions. And as I shared the saga with crowds under ancestral oaks that had witnessed it all, fireflies later dancing with Emily by my side. Now my partner in this healed world, our fingers intertwined as we watched the stars. I reflected on regrets, the stress that grayed my hair, the threats that haunted, dreams, finding none, the battles forging unbreakable bonds, a legacy of resilience passed down like Grandpa's tools. In the quiet closure of it all, with the valley whispering peace through honeysuckle winds and the faint echo of festival cleanup, I knew we'd not just won land, but reclaimed dignity for everyone they'd wronged, proving that when injustice strikes at the heart of family and fairness, fighting back isn't optional. It's the spark that lights the way for others, a testament to family ties enduring through time, to righteous vengeance healing wounds inflicted by greed, and to communities rising from the ashes of corruption, stronger, united, free. Now, think about it. What would you do if faced with such entrenched corruption? Was my pursuit of justice too relentless, or just the right measure against their tyranny? Does true equity demand exposing every hidden wrong, even if it upends lives, or is there room for mercy in the name of ethics? Drop your thoughts below, because these debates keep the fire alive.